is now my pleasure to introduce this year's commencement speaker, Dr. Bill Browder.
President Casey, distinguished faculty, proud parents, and most importantly, the brilliant class of 2024, it is an honor to stand here today and share a few thoughts as you embark on the next chapter of your lives. A few weeks ago, Duke got Jerry Seinfeld. NYU got Taylor Swift 2 years ago. And Princeton got Jeff Bezos in 2010. You're not getting a global pop sensation, the king of comedy, or one of the world's richest men. But you are getting the person who Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, hates most in the Western world. That's not an exaggeration. In the last 10 years, Putin has threatened me with death, with kidnapping, with 8 Interpol arrest warrants, with extradition requests from the United Kingdom where I live, and perhaps most dramatically, when Putin met with Trump in Helsinki at the first summit between the two presidents, Putin asked to have me handed over. It was only with a vote in the Senate, 98-0, that I wasn't handed over. So I'm particularly happy to be here today. So how did I end up having the most evil dictator in the world wanting me dead? It all started about 100 years ago. My grandfather, Earl Browder, was a labor union organizer from Wichita, Kansas. And he was so good at organizing the union, he was spotted by the communists. And they said, if you like labor unionism, you're going to love communism. Why don't you come and check it out? So he moved to Moscow. He met my grandmother. My father was born there. And then 5 years later, they returned to America, and he became head of the American Communist Party. He ran for president against Roosevelt in 1936 and 1940. He was imprisoned in 1941, pardoned in 42. He was expelled from the Communist Party in 1945 for being too much of a capitalist. And then he was viciously pursued during the McCarthy era for being a communist. So this is my family legacy. I was born in 1964. I'm 60 years old. And when I was going through my teenage rebellion, I was trying to figure out, how do I rebel from this family of communists? I grew my hair long. You can't tell now. Actually, you can tell. There's nothing here. That didn't upset my family. I followed the Grateful Dead around the country. That also didn't upset my family. But then I came up with the perfect way of upsetting my family, which was to put on a suit and tie and become a capitalist. And that really did upset my family. I went to Stanford Business School, and I graduated business school in 1989. Which was a very auspicious year because that was the year that the Berlin Wall came down. And as I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, as I'm sure many of you are thinking about today, I had an epiphany, which is that if my grandfather was the biggest communist in America and the Berlin Wall has just come down, I'm going to try to become the biggest capitalist in Eastern Europe. And that's what I set out to do. I eventually moved to Russia. I set up an investment fund, and I achieved my objective. My investment fund became the largest investment fund in the country. The problem was that I was investing in all sorts of companies which were run by these people called the oligarchs. And the oligarchs were stealing money hand over fist in the companies that I was investing in. And I didn't like that, and I tried to figure out how to stop it. And I came up with an idea, which was to research how they went about doing the stealing, and then to share that research with the international media. So I started to do that. And as you can imagine, it didn't make me a lot of friends in Russia. In 2005, I was expelled from the country and declared a threat to national security. In 2007, my offices were raided by the police. They seized my corporate documents. I didn't know what they were up to, so I went out and hired the smartest lawyer I could find in Russia, a young man named Sergey Magnitsky. He worked for an American law firm, and I asked him to figure out what they were up to. Sergey investigated, and he discovered that the theft of our documents by the police from our office were then used to steal $230 million of taxes that we had paid to the Russian government. Sergey exposed the fraud. He testified against the officials involved. But instead of going after the people who committed the fraud went after him. Sergey was arrested by the same police officers he testified against and put in pretrial detention. They put him in cells with 14 inmates and 8 beds and kept the lights on 24 hours a day to impose sleep deprivation. They put him in cells with no heat and no window panes in Moscow, so he nearly froze to death. They put him in cells with no toilet, just the hole in the floor where the sewage would bubble up. They'd move him from cell to cell to cell in the middle of the night. And the purpose of all this was to get him to withdraw his testimony against the corrupt police officers and to get him to sign a false confession to say that he stole the $230 million, and he did so on my instruction. Sergey was a man of incredible principle and integrity, and for him, the idea of perjuring himself and bearing false witness was more awful than the pain they were subjecting him to, and he refused to give in. As a result, the torture got worse and worse. After 6 months, his health started to break down. He developed terrible pains in his stomach. He'd lost 40 pounds, and he was diagnosed as having pancreatitis and gallstones, requiring an operation, which was scheduled for the 1st of August, 2009. A week before the operation, his persecutors came to him again, and again demanded he sign a false confession. Again, he refused. In retaliation, they moved him to the worst maximum security prison in Russia, called Butyrka, which most significantly for Sergey had no medical facilities to treat his pancreatitis and gallstones. At Butyrka, his health completely broke down. He went into a terrible downward spiral, constant, agonizing pain. He and his lawyers wrote 20 different desperate requests for medical attention to every different branch of the criminal justice system. All of those requests were either ignored or denied in writing. On the night of November 16, 2009, Sergey Magnitsky went into critical condition. The Butyrka authorities did not want to have responsibility for him anymore, so they put him in an ambulance and sent him across town to a different prison that had a medical wing. When he arrived there, instead of putting him in the emergency room, they put him in an isolation cell, chained him to a bed, and 8 riot guards with rubber batons beat him until he died. He was 37 years old. He left a wife and 2 children. I got the news of his murder the next day, and it was the most horrifying, life-changing news I could ever imagine. He was killed as my proxy. If he hadn't worked for me, he'd still be alive today. On that day, I made a vow to his memory, to his family, and to myself that I was going to put aside everything else I was doing in my life and devote all of my time, all of my energy, and all of my resources to go after the people who killed him, make sure they face justice. And for the last 15 years, that's what I've been doing. The Russians refused any possibility of justice in their country, and so I said, how do we get justice outside of Russia? And I came up with an idea. The people who killed him did it for money, and they don't keep their money in Russia. They keep it in the West. They buy ski chalets in Aspen, condos in South Beach, apartments in Manhattan. So I went to Washington, and I told the story I've just told you to 2 senators, a Democratic senator from Maryland, Benjamin Cardin, and a Republican senator from Arizona, the late John McCain. And I asked them, can we freeze the assets and ban the travel of the people who killed Sergey Magnitsky and the people who commit similar crimes? And they said yes. And that became the Magnitsky Act. When it came to a vote, it passed 92-4 in the Senate. It passed the House of Representatives with 89%, and it became a federal law on December 14th, 2012. Putin went out of his mind. Putin was so mad, he banned the adoption of Russian orphans by American families in retaliation. He made it his most important foreign policy priority to repeal the Magnitsky Act, and he went after me. I'm pleased to say that the congressmen and women did not flinch. Instead, they widened the Magnitsky Act into the Global Magnitsky Act to apply it to human rights violators anywhere and everywhere in the world. And I didn't flinch either. I went to Canada. Canada unanimously passed the Canadian Magnitsky Act in 2017. Then the UK passed it in 2018. The EU in 2020. Australia 2021. There's Magnitsky Acts in Iceland, Norway, Kosovo, Montenegro. There are now 35 countries with Magnitsky Acts around the world. Putin rused the day he killed Sergey Magnitsky. Most significantly, the victims all around the world of human rights abuse now have a mechanism for redress who have been subjected to similar atrocities. So what does this all have to do with you? A lot. You may not be going off to find your adventures in Russia, but many elements of my story will be elements of your story. First, prepare for uncertainty and be ready to course correct. You'll never be able to predict what will happen in your life. When I was your age in school, all I cared about was finding a job where I could make a lot of money. I was the least likely person to become a global human rights activist. Life is going to throw all sorts of unexpected curveballs at you. You're going to have to roll with the punches and adapt. Expect to start with one plan and end up with a completely different one. Second, there will be people who will try to knock you off course. There will be moments of disillusionment, of wanting to take the easy road. Powerful forces will try to convince you to take that your struggle is futile, that one person can't make a difference. To that I say, don't listen to the naysayers. I can't count how many people came to me and told me to keep my head down, not to seek justice, and just carry on with my life. But I could not do that. If I did, it would have poisoned me from the inside. Do not let the cynics drag you down. Third, the winners are the ones who stay in the game. If my experience had taught me anything, it is that perseverance and unwavering commitment can move mountains. There are many people who do not want me to succeed both inside and outside of Russia, but they were working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I was working all the time. There will be setbacks along the way, but keep pushing forward. Never give up, never give in. Tenacity and persistence trump everything in the end. Finally, and above all, do not go it alone. Surround yourself with people, friends, and loved ones who share your values and visions and who will believe in you and support you. A network of trusted friends and allies will give you formidable power. I could have never accomplished the things that I did without my wife, my children, and my colleagues who supported me, challenged me, and comforted me when I needed. Success is a team sport. Embrace people who will help you succeed. As you venture out into the world, Find your Sergey Magnitsky, the cause, the idea that sets your soul on fire. Commit yourself to it. Focus on it with laser intensity. Do not let anyone tell you you can't achieve your dreams. The next chapter in history is going to be written by you. Go forth, Colgate graduates, and start writing it. Thank you, God bless you, and congratulations to the class of 2024.
Thank you, Dr. Browder. I now call forward the Provost and the Dean of the Faculty.